Hi everyone! Today I'm gonna walk you through the creation of the Nightmare Dollop. It's the first prey type monster for my book Zero Drag Murder Mouth, and thank you all for watching this movie. So right here I'm using Z-Spheres in ZBrush 2018, but I mean Z-Spheres have been in there forever, to make a maquette. And as you can see in the background, I have my second pass concept art already drawn. And I like to make a maquette in ZBrush before I do my final 2D concept pass, my final pass on just the concept drawing, because I'm really comfortable in ZBrush. I've been working in it since 2009, I think, and I work in this faster than I would normal clay or Sculpting or whatnot. So right now I'm just roughing out the shape based on my concept up in the corner there, and once I have this, I am going to just snap a few quick screenshots of it, and I'll use that to create my final 2D concept drawings. Then once I have that, and you'll see that later on, I'll pop that up behind this behind the sculpt so you can see it. I use the maquette to create that drawing, and then I'll go back and I'll refine the sculpt. But right now we're just basically roughing out the shapes, because all I'm going to be using this for is to help me draw at different angles. So right there you just saw, that was a quick flash of the final 2D drawings, and now I'm moving into actually sculpting the creature. Right here I've used the lobster reference that flashed up on the screen, and I'm just trying to make it a little bit more realistic. I noticed that in my drawings it wasn't quite, I guess it could have worked, but it wasn't quite accurate, so I was just trying to get that more. Now I'm popping off the shell pieces, and I've imported the body back in. I'm smoothing it out, and I'm going to lay the shell pieces on top. So here I'm just forming the individual shell pieces. I'm using Dynamesh and Z Remesher to get this job done. Just making some symmetry right there. Same thing here, I'm popping those arm pieces off to make them all into separate little shell pieces, and then I'll work on them individually. And that's what I'm kind of blowing through right here. Does the little flippers on the back. So right here we're just getting into placing the little shell pieces, refining them a little bit, getting the big shapes working, and carving in the underbelly of the it's like a lobster underbelly that I went with here. And I'm trying to merge the lobster underbelly with the tentacles. Now right here I'm detailing out the tentacles in the mouth area, which is a beak. I went with the beak because it's similar to the cephalopods. And I'm laying out like these little kind of baby suckers. I didn't want this creature to be, I don't know, I wanted him to be badass but not really badass, so I didn't give him a lot of suckers. I actually went down from the suckers in the concept art, and I wanted to make him look like he could maybe fight off a predator, but not well. That's why they're called Nightmare Dollops, because Dollops is a pretty meek sounding name. I'm just doing some wrinkles here. All my brushes you can see in the lower left corner. I like this setup because I'm left-handed and my brushes are right there by my left hand. The only brushes that I don't use that aren't docked there, I use Snake Hook, SK Cloth, and SK Slash. If you ever needed them, just let me know and I'll send you them. I'm just refining the underbelly a little bit. And refining the base of the creature. I'm trying to work piece by piece a little bit while working on the whole. I'm trying to define the planes of the shells here. and I use H polish a lot, or trim dynamic. And I'm doing that with each one, like going through piece by piece and using H polish or trim dynamic and the SK slash or SK cloth to refine that edge. And I'm just trying to get the flat planes of the shells established, and then I'll go through and later on and I'll kind of grime them out, like make them look like they've got nicks and holes and they've been through wear and tear and they've run from or swam away from creatures that were trying to eat them. Those were just the little leg shell pieces, and I extruded them out and made them into their own separate meshes, and then used Dynamesh. Now I'm refining them and making them fit on the monster itself. I'm doing the same process here for his claws. For the bumps, I'm using clay buildup and inflate. I'd say I use clay buildup for 90% of my sculpting. I just love that brush. I found that this piece was a little more time consuming than I thought it would be. At first I had him just as kind of like this squishy worm-like, octopus-like creature, and that's essentially just like one piece. And when something's one piece, it doesn't take that long to sculpt it out. But this, where I went with all the tiny little shell bits, and I wanted them to have a lot of detail in the final render, so I went in and detailed them all individually. And that did take a little bit of time, but I'm really pleased with the final outcome, so it was worth it. And here I'm refining the body wrinkles. I didn't like how they were coming out, so I'm just using clay buildup and the SK cloth brush to work on that. Now I think I'm moving on to detailing out the shell parts. So I'm just trying to get them to look worn and like they're natural. Like, they were looking kind of too plasticky to me, so I wanted them to still have hard forms because they are shell, but I also wanted them to look organic. So I have crab and lobster references off on my side monitor, and I'm just using that and trying to break up the forms a little bit. And really, all of this is just clay buildup. It's nothing really special. That's probably a Damien Standard brush right there to cut the holes into it. And I did a lot of work on the edges of each shell piece, like I'm doing here. It was a little bit tedious, but like I said, I didn't really have a plan at this point of how I wanted it to render. I wanted it to be able to be turned in any view and render well. So that's why I took the time to detail out all the angles. Like, if you're just doing a render and it's just facing one direction and you're in a time crunch, you can kind of get away with slacking off from the back part, but I knew I wanted to rotate them around, maybe have multiple creatures in the final render, so that's why I'm taking the time to detail out every angle and every little nook and cranny here. more little showpiece detailing. Now I've moved on to his little flippers. I don't actually know if they're really called flippers, but they're the back little fins on a lobster tail. This creature swims backwards like a lobster. If you look at the final concept piece, I've done a small little keyframe drawing of how he'll swim. And they have little fuzzy bits on the end, just like a lobster. Which I didn't add the fuzzy bits in ZBrush because I knew that I was going to do the final composite in Photoshop, and it's really easy to paint in those stray hairs on a linear dodge layer. So that's just how I did it. I just kept it simple. In other drawings or compositions, I will use fiber mesh to get those little hairs in, but he just had a little bit of fuzz here and there, so I just painted it in. So right there I was smoothing out some wrinkles that didn't really make sense, trying to make big, medium, and small shapes. Because if you have big next to medium next to small, in any combination of that, it starts to look more organic. You don't want like medium, 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 or small, 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 or you know, you don't want the same thing going on all the time. You want variation, and that just makes everything look more natural. I'm trying to refine the musculature of the tentacles back here, on the front and the back of the tentacle. A tentacle is nothing but muscle, so I wanted him to at least look like he could catch his own prey, which would be like really, really tiny little fish. Oh, and these are based off of a couple things, like crabs, lobsters, cuttlefish, and Dumbo octopus for the little ear-like appendages on the top. But one thing I found out about the cuttlefish is they have 8 arms, which are seen here, and then they have 2 tentacles, which attack, like they use for attacking and killing their prey, and they are stored in kind of a little pocket-like area that's kind of up by the eye. It's hidden by the arms, and then the tentacles shoot out and grab their prey. And that's how this guy hunts, is he'll put his little crab arms down and kind of make a little tripod and shoot his tentacles out and catch the fish and pull them back in. Here, it was a idea that I ended up abandoning. I wanted to make his eye look more like a cephalopod, more like an octopus, and in that way more alien. But after I went through all this, I decided I hated it and brought it back and decided to refine my other eye. I didn't want it to, it just looks so, I don't know, it kind of looks like a pineapple slice to me right now, and I didn't like that, and it looked too impersonal. So here I've gone back and I've just decided that I'm going to take this eye, which I liked but wanted to refine, and I'll refine it further. Now I've jumped back onto his little legs. It seems like there's a lot of jumping around, but I think that's really important because you have to address the model as a whole. You can't just work one area to completion and then work another area to completion, because then it ends up looking all piecemeal. So you want everything to work well. So I jump around. Now I'm just pulling out alphas on the skin right there. Just standard brush with an alpha and a drag. And here I'm posing it in Transpose Master. The thing that I was going for, and the thing that's so challenging with things with tentacles, because apparently I make a lot of monsters with tentacles, is the silhouette. You want the silhouette to be clear, and when you've got tentacles and arms and everything, you end up with overlap sometimes, and that makes the silhouette hard to read. So the final pose that I settled with, you can see the arms and the tentacles all separated, and they're not overlapping. That's my goal there. Now I've moved on to coloring. Obviously, based on the reference picture in the back, I'm using a Nautilus as my coloration guide. I really liked the green and white and kind of reddish orange that he had going on, and he has spots and stripes, which is badass. So that's what I decided to go with. And just like with the sculpting, With the poly painting, I'm doing each shell piece individually and loading the last shell piece, so I try and maintain the exact same color. Sometimes that requires me to go back over and add more green or white or whatnot, but all the shell pieces had to be consistently the same color. I made the flesh of the creature slightly lighter. I'm doing his little fins. Now here, the way poly paint works, it's additive. So I've added a base of kind of light orange. Now I'm going over with a more ruddy reddish color, and then I'll go in and I'll break that up with some of the whitish green. It was a little bit of a challenge to poly paint because the Nautilus, it's largely shell that you see, so you don't see a lot of areas where there would be blood pooling or like subtle reds underneath the skin. So what I ended up doing was deviating a little bit from my Nautilus reference and going in and adding some pinks where the blood might have pooled on the fleshy parts of his skin. Right here I'm making using, I think, a cuttlefish eye to make a texture to put onto his eye. I'm just trying to make the stripes and the markings match same kind of red. Here you can see what I was talking about. I'm adding in some of the places where the blood might have pooled under the skin, like little nooks and crannies. Okay, and this is pretty much him. After this, I went into doing my render passes and final composition. So thanks for watching. Hey everyone, this is Sarah Dollinger, and this is the final render of the Nightmare Dollop. Thanks so much for watching the process movie, and I wanted to take this time to thank my patrons. This project, Zero Drag Murder Mouth, is funded through my Patreon. If you would like to join, go to www.patreon.com/Sarah Dollinger, and you'll be able to see the monsters first, see the movies first, talk to me on my Discord channel about all sorts of creatures and animals and art and whatnot, and in general support a project that I can't wait to bring into the world fully. Thanks so much for your time, and see you on the next one.